Today, we're cracking open William Golding's Lord of the Flies. And let me tell you, this book is part adventure, part horror, and 100% a terrifying look in the mirror. See, this isn't just some story about kids stranded on an island. It gets at a much deeper, much scarier question. Who are we really when nobody is watching? So let's just dive right into the deep end, because this is the big one, isn't it? It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with for, well, forever. Are we basically good, but society messes us up? Or are we just savage animals at heart, barely held in check by a thin, fragile layer of wool? You've got two main camps in this debate. On one side, you have thinkers like Rousseau, who talked about noble savages, and Mencius, who was all in on our innate goodness. But on the other side, well, you have Hobbes, who famously said life in nature is a war of all against all, and the philosopher Xunzi, who argued that, nope, human nature is fundamentally evil, and any goodness has to be learned. And Lord of the Flies, it basically throws its characters right into the middle of this philosophical cage match. And that is where the island comes in. You have to understand, Lord of the Flies isn't just a novel, it's a thought experiment. It's like Golding created this literary laboratory designed to just strip away everything, all of society, and see what's really left of us underneath. So who was the guy running this dark experiment? Well, William Golding was a British schoolteacher, sure, but here's the thing you really need to know about him. He was a veteran of World War II. He was in the Royal Navy, he was there for the D-Day landings in Normandy. He saw, firsthand, the absolute worst things people are capable of doing to each other. And you can bet that experience completely shaped how he saw human nature. The setup sounds almost simple, right? During a war, a plane full of British schoolboys, we're talking kids as young as 6, crashes on a deserted island. And the key is, there are no adults, no teachers, no police, no laws, nothing. It is the perfect isolated petri dish to test that huge question, what happens now? And what happens is, almost right away, the island becomes a battlefield. But it's not just a fight for survival against the elements. It's a war for the very soul of the group, pitting the impulse to be civilized against the seductive call of pure savagery. And this whole conflict really plays out through two leaders. First up, you've got Ralph. He gets elected chief, and he's all about democracy and order. His top priority? Build shelters, and most importantly, keep a signal fire going. That fire is their only link back to the civilized world. But then there's Jack. He's the leader of the hunters. He represents raw brute force power. All he cares about is the thrill of the hunt, and his tool of choice is the spear, a perfect symbol for that primal instinct. Now, what's so brilliant about this book is how Golding uses these really powerful symbols to show us how things fall apart. The conch shell, for example, represents law and order. If you're holding it, you have the right to speak. The signal fire, well, that's hope. But as Jack's crew gets more powerful, new symbols take over. The pig hunt becomes this ritual of bloodlust, and the painted faces, they're like masks that let the boys just erase their old selves, freeing them from any sense of shame or morality. Okay, so as all this order is breaking down, the boys' fear starts to zero in on one single, terrifying idea, that they are not alone on the island. They become completely obsessed with this mysterious beast that they think is lurking out there in the jungle, some kind of monster stalking them in the dark. And this fear of the beast, it starts to drive everything. It fuels their paranoia. It pushes them away from Ralph and toward Jack, because Jack promises he can hunt it and kill it. But what actually was this thing? Was it some kind of sea monster? A weird jungle animal? I mean, what were they so terrified of? And this is the gut punch of the novel. It's Simon, this quiet, observant kid, who has the absolutely terrifying revelation. He finally understands that the beast isn't something they can hunt down with a spear. The monster isn't out there. It's in here. The beast is us. And that realization explains the book's chilling title. See, Jack's tribe kills a pig and leaves its severed head on a stick as this gruesome offering to the beast. As it rots and gets covered in flies, it gets a name, the Lord of the Flies. Well, that's a direct translation of the name Beelzebub, a biblical name for a powerful demon, even the devil himself. It's the perfect name for the evil that Golding believed was hiding inside every single one of us. So yeah, this is a seriously bleak and disturbing book. It's not exactly a feel-good story. So why? Why has this novel, published all the way back in the 50s, stuck around? Why does it still feel so powerful and honestly so haunting today? Well, to really get it, you have to picture the world it was born into. Golding published this in 1954. That's less than 10 years after the end of World War II and the dropping of the atomic bombs. The Soviet Union had just tested its own bomb. The Korean War had made the Cold War terrifyingly real. The whole world was living under this constant, heavy shadow of total nuclear annihilation. The book's darkness wasn't just Golden being pessimistic. It was a perfect reflection of a global doomsday atmosphere. So what's the core message? What does it all boil down to? It's this. The book is a direct challenge to that whole idea of innate goodness. It argues that civilization, all our rules, our morals, our society, it isn't our natural state. It's actually just this incredibly thin, fragile layer painted on top of our true nature. And without laws and authority to keep it in place, it can be stripped away in a heartbeat, revealing something much, much darker underneath. And Golden gives us the exact recipe for how this happens. Step 1, it all starts with fear. Fear makes you need an enemy, an outside monster to blame. Step 2, the hunt for that monster gives you permission to indulge your most primal urges. Step 3, you create group rituals, you put on masks, and suddenly no one feels individually responsible for what they do. And the final step, violence becomes the only true form of power. And the ending, wow, the ending is maybe the most brutal part of all. The boys are rescued by a naval officer who shows up and is just appalled. He scolds them for not behaving like proper, civilized British boys. But here's the devastating irony. This officer is an active participant in a massive global war. He's engaged in the exact same tribal conflict, just with battleships instead of sharpened sticks. The boys' savagery was just a small-scale model of the very adult world that came to save them. And that brings us to the book's final chilling question, the one that Golden isn't asking the boys, but is asking us. You have to remember, the boys on that island, they weren't born monsters. They were just ordinary kids. So the real question is, if all the rules vanished tomorrow, no society, no laws, no one watching, who would you become? Would you be the one trying to keep the signal fire going? Or would you be the one picking up a spear?
Today, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful novels ever written. Seriously, it's a story that basically peels back that thin, fragile layer we call civilization to show us the raw, unsettling truth of what's hiding right underneath.
So just imagine for a second, you're stranded. No parents, no teachers, no internet, no laws. What would you actually do? How would you act? This isn't just some random hypothetical. Nope, it's the central, absolutely terrifying question at the heart of what we're talking about today.
And, well, William Golding's masterpiece, Lord of the Flies, is basically one big, dark, and gripping experiment to answer that very question. It's so much more than a story. It's like a deep look into the anatomy of society itself.
All right, so let's set the scene. You've got a plane. It's packed with British schoolboys, and it crashes on this remote tropical island. The only survivors? The kids. No grown-ups anywhere. Just paradise. Or, so it seems at first.
So what's the first thing they do? Well, they try to copy the world they just left. They hold a vote and elect a leader, a boy named Ralph. Now his authority doesn't come from being the strongest, but from a symbol, this beautiful conch shell. And it becomes this powerful icon of democracy and order. The rule is simple. If you're holding the conch, you get to speak. That's it. That's their first law.
But here's the thing. While Ralph is all about making rules and trying to get rescued, another instinct starts bubbling up. It's something way more primal, something that promises meat and power and this thrilling escape from the very civilization they're trying to rebuild.
And you can see this incredible slippery slope start to form. At first, there's hesitation. The boys are still, regular kids, and they just can't bring themselves to actually kill a pig. But then, they do. And that first taste of blood, it just awakens something in them. They start painting their faces, hiding behind these masks that make them feel free from any kind of shame. And pretty soon, keeping that rescue fire going just doesn't seem as important as the absolute thrill of the hunt.
Golding just nails this split with this quote, doesn't he?
On one side, you have the intoxicating rush of the hunt, its pure primal instinct. And on the other, you've got that quiet, nagging voice of reason, of common sense, and the hope of getting back home. The island isn't one society anymore. It's become a battlefield for two totally different realities. And this whole battlefield really comes down to two boys, two key symbols, and two completely, tragically different ideas for what their future should be. It's civilization's last hope against our most basic instincts. So here it is, laid bare. You've got Ralph and his brainy sidekick Piggy holding onto the conch for dear life. It represents rules, democracy, and the hope of rescue. And then you've got Jack, the leader of the hunters. He's all about instinct, violence, and a raw lust for power. This is way more than just a squabble between kids, right? This is a fight for the very soul of humanity.
And get this. Look what happens to technology in the middle of all this. Piggy's glasses. They're literally the one tool they have that can create fire. They're a symbol of science, of intellect. But does Jack's tribe steal them to keep the rescue signal going? No way. They steal them to cook the pigs they've killed. It just goes to show you, intellect without morality, it just becomes another weapon for our most basic desires. So as the rules and order start to crumble, a brand new, terrifying force starts to take over the island. And that force is fear. A deep, gnawing fear of the unknown that starts to take on a very specific shape. The little kids, they call them the little-uns, they start having these awful nightmares. They start whispering about a beastie, some kind of snake thing that comes out of the dark. And before you know it, that fear spreads to everyone. So the question becomes, is there really a monster hiding in the jungle? Of course, the boys start projecting their fear onto anything they can. Maybe it's a giant squid from the sea, or a ghost. They even mistake the body of a dead pilot hanging from his parachute on the mountain for some kind of monster that bows and rises in the wind. They're desperately looking for an enemy on the outside to explain the darkness they feel growing on the inside. But then there's Simon. He's the quiet, perceptive one, and he has a totally different theory. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most chilling lines in all of literature. He suggests, maybe the beast is us. He realizes the beast isn't something you can hunt down and kill with a spear. It's something that's already inside of them. It's the darkness in the human heart. And Simon's revelation, it's just tragically spot on. Because when the boys finally decide to confront the beast, what they actually unleash is their own savagery, and the consequences are absolutely devastating. The fall happens so fast, and it's just brutal. First, Simon, who really represents spiritual truth, is murdered in a frenzy when he tries to tell the others what he's discovered. Then Piggy, the voice of reason, is killed by a giant boulder, and as he falls, the conch smashes into 1,000 pieces. At that moment, civilization is officially dead, and all that's left is for the tribe to hunt down Ralph. So why? Why does this story, written so many decades ago, still feel so raw and relevant? Well, I think it's because the island isn't just some patch of land in the ocean. It's a psychological state, one that we can see reflected in our own world, all the time. Let's look at this through a more modern lens for a sec. The psychologist Erich Fromm talked about this destructive impulse he called necrophilia. And no, not what you might be thinking. It's a psychological attraction to death and decay. It's this desire to turn living, breathing, unpredictable things into dead, controllable objects. And isn't that exactly what we see happening with Jack's tribe as they go from hunters to killers? I mean, this drive to dehumanize isn't stuck on a fictional island. We see echoes of it everywhere in modern abuses of power, from the office to the world stage. When people feel empty or powerless on the inside, they sometimes try to get absolute control over others, treating people like things, just to fuel this awful cycle of cruelty. The ending of the book, wow, it is just drenched in irony. Just as Ralph is about to be killed, a naval officer shows up on the beach. They're rescued. But here's the kicker. The officer is from a warship. He's a player in the ultimate, most organized form of savagery there is, global war. He actually scolds the boys for their bad behavior, totally unable to see his own world reflected back at him in their twisted, bloody games. And that's what leaves us with the novel's final haunting question. The kids, who were completely lost to savagery, were saved by the so-called civilized world of grown-ups. But if that adult world is just playing the exact same primal game on a much, much bigger scale, then who is left to rescue them?